welcome everyone to the April MIHEC Learning Community event. My name is Liz Hannon. My pronouns are she, her. I have short brown hair, glasses, and I'm wearing a blue shirt. And we have a few announcements before we hear from our presenters today. For accessibility, closed captioning is enabled. If you need any help, just text us or put a note in the chat. And then if you can type your questions in the chat, we'll post them during the Q&A at the end. And we have a land acknowledgement that the University of Minnesota stands on the rightful homelands of Indigenous peoples. It is their current and continued displacement that allows the university to remain today. And at ICI, we affirm our commitment to address systemic racism, ableism, and all other inequalities and forms of oppression to ensure inclusive communities. Funding for tonight's Learning Community event is provided by state appropriation through the Minnesota Office of Higher Education. And then we do have some announcements regarding some upcoming events. And we'll provide some links in the chat for some, and then others will just provide information later when it becomes available. But the first is that May 1st is IPSY Day, and we have requested the governor's proclamation for the day, and Think College has resources on its website to share on social media and across your campus community. So we'll have a link in the chat for that. And then we have in May, there'll be a community of practice gathering on competitive grant, RFP, and frequently asked questions. So that will be coming up. There's also a Minnesota Association of Financial Aid Administrators Conference on May 8th, and Mary Hoff will be presenting with Cha and Jacqueline from OHE on inclusive higher education and the CTP application with the U.S. Department of Education. And faculty and staff are encouraged to reach out to your financial aid office and ask the staff or encourage them to attend the session. We'll be having our first annual MIHEC conference in the fall. It'll be on September 25th, so save the date, and more information will be coming through the MIHEC website and the Momentum newsletter. And there's a great webinar coming up. Think College is offering a webinar on April 18th on inclusive academics, working with faculty and instructors to support academic access. And the webinar information and registration link is in the chat. And last, the state-of-the-art and student leadership conferences, the SOTA, have been announced. They'll be October 29th and 30th in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And there's also a link in the chat for that. So now I would like to welcome our presenters from Temple University, Katie Burke, Andrea Parente, and Michaela Henry. And I'll turn it over to them. Welcome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Liz. We're excited to be here with you today. My name is Katie Burke. I serve as the faculty advisor for Leadership and Career Studies at Temple, which is an inclusive post-secondary education program for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I use she, her pronouns. I have a Temple background that looks kind of like a bulletin board. I'm wearing a blue sweater and I have blonde hair. I will turn it over to Andrea to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Parente. I am a graduate student assistant at Temple University. I work for LNCS, focused on work related to self-determination. I am a female with brown hair, and I'm wearing glasses and a turtleneck shirt. My background is blurred, and I use she, her pronouns. Michaela, if you want to go ahead.
My name is Michaela Henry. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm part of the LCS program. I'm a student there. But yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Michaela and Andrea. So we're excited today to tell you more about a model that we've been working on and implementing on our campus for a couple years now. So with that said, we can go to our next slide. We want to acknowledge the contributions of our collaborators at Think College, specifically Kathy Becht, who's no longer there, but she was a wonderful partner with me as I sought to kind of write up this work and describe what it was that we were doing. Next slide, please. So jumping ahead, and you can go ahead and advance the slide there. On the screen, you'll see that the text at the top says, you can advance so it'll click and show the text. There we go. And you can pull all of it up. It says, what is Leadership and Career Studies, or LNCS, as you'll hear us call it? And there's a photo of 7 of our graduates 2 years ago standing in their caps and gowns, holding their diplomas. Leadership and Career Studies is a 4-year inclusive college certificate program for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities at Temple University. We are a comprehensive transition program. We started in about 2008 as a 2-year initiative, and in 2017 became a 4-year initiative and gained that CTP status. In Leadership and Career Studies, we currently have 24 students. Students focus on developing academic abilities, career skills, and social maturity while promoting self-determination and independence so that they can live the life of their choosing as productive and skilled citizens in the community. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've been very lucky in that since 2020, we have been one of 5 partner schools on a TIPSID, or Transition and Post-Secondary Program for Students with Intellectual Disabilities grant from the government. And we serve as one of 5 model initiatives that make up the Pennsylvania Inclusive Higher Education Consortium, led by Millersville. On this slide, you'll see a picture of a graduate of our program smiling. He's at a Temple football game and he's holding a Temple flag. So moving on to the next slide, we want to frame our conversation for today. I'd like for you to think back to when you were 18. For some of you, that may be the far distant past. For some of you, that may be more recent. Think about what goals you had. Think about the experiences that you wanted, and think about the skills that you needed to get there. For us in Leadership and Career Studies, the way the program had previously been operating, we focused on providing supports around these things to students through what we called a program seminar, where students met only with one another and talked through the college and career skills that they were working on or needed to advance. And what we recognized was that really wasn't fulfilling our mission of being completely inclusive, but we also feared that there would be a gap in terms of how we would support students to focus on their individual goals, their individual needs, the individual experiences they wanted and skills they needed to develop. And so it was through that and conversations with Think College that we landed on the college and career learning model. So we can go to the next slide. Here on this slide, you'll see a visual that we've designed that reflects the college and career learning model. I'll share that this started as the college and career learning plan, which was something that the team at Think College had developed a few years ago. And it had a lot of similarities with what you see now, but we've refined it in some ways that enable students to continue to return to it on a semester basis, and also reflects how the different components of an inclusive post-secondary education program support the objectives of the college and career learning model. So in this visual, you'll see a student at the center. For us, the student is always at the center. We make sure that happens by focusing the college and career learning model on the student's person-centered plan, as well as a list of college and career skills that Think College has established that are valuable for students during their experiences and upon graduation. Based on their person-centered plan and college and career learning skills, students select and work toward at least one goal each semester related to those things, and they engage in at least 4 experiences. We'll give you some more specifics about each of these components in a moment. But the other two things that are surrounding the student are the circle of support, and you'll see a visual with a few different people that make up a graphic here. Those are the peer mentors who support students. Students in leadership and career studies each have 3 or 4 mentors generally in a given semester, who spend a total of about 10 hours a week with them, supporting with academic, social engagement, and so on. And we also support students through student advising when we follow up and talk about the college and career learning model. But in sum, we really see this model as reflecting the full picture of student goal setting, skill development, experiences, and the supports they need to do those things. Next slide, please. So I'm going to tell you about the first component before I turn it over to Mikayla to tell you a little bit about her example. If you could click the slide, you can advance all of the text there. Great. So the first component that the college and career learning model is based on is person-centered planning. At Leadership and Career Studies, we use Charting the Life course, which is out of the University of Missouri. But there are a number of different models that have been explored through research and implemented in practice. We sit down to do a full person-centered planning process with students in the summer before they start with us in their first year. And then we update their person-centered plan at least annually. And often each semester we do an update to their summary sheet so that they can continue to use that in guiding the things that they choose to pursue. Person-centered planning is a process that is focused on the student, and the student is supported by the Leadership and Career Studies program team, as well as their advisor. It reflects an overall plan of the student's long-term goals, what they want their college experience to look like, and what they want the outcomes to be, and their strengths and needs. And this one-page summary that we're about to show you really reflects that for each individual team and becomes a tool that they can use as they direct the supports around them. So if we go to the next slide, Mikayla can share with us a bit about her person-centered plan. So Mikayla, do you want to take it away?
Yeah. My personal information is having a good sense of humor, kind, hardworking, enjoy meeting new people and making new friendships. I remember in the first year, I remember being like, I just want to stay home. But over time, it started to build up. Like I started to be myself, and I started making friends. Spending more most of my time with mom and my little sister, loving going to restaurants, Vietnamese food, attending church, and visiting beaches and Atlantic Sea. So I love spending time with my mom, my sister, because like sometimes we be watching a movie like Medea, and it's the most funniest thing in the world. Because like we get the same time with each other and we get to laugh. So my social information is cooking interesting food. So I remember in ninth grade, I'm not in ninth grade, but I remember in freshman year in college, I was like, man, I should start cooking. And then I waited until my second year in college. And that's when I realized my mom was like, "No, what, Mikhail, you gotta cook some food, your own food when you get your own apartment." And I was like, "You know what? I should." And my mom taught me how to cook spaghetti and stuff. And yeah.
Great. Thanks, Mikayla. We appreciate you sharing. And what we did is this is really a one-page document, and we just took, screenshots of it to reflect some of the information that Mikayla wanted to highlight. So if you go to the next slide, Mikayla, would you tell us a little bit about your learning goals, your academics, and your career goals?
So my bad, y'all. So my my learning goals are how to manage and organize time effectively with a good head of get ahead of assignments. So like my goals is like learning how to like manage and organize. Cause I remember I was like in a freshman year of college. I was like, man, I remember one time a mentor told me I needed she's like, Michaela, you gotta organize a little bit. And I was like, man, I should. And the time more effectively get ahead of assignments. And yeah, for the assignments part, my mentors actually help me with the assignments. It depends on what assignment that gets that hard. But yeah.
Great. Thanks. And can you tell us a little bit about the career goals that you have for yourself?
My career goals. I'm so sorry. I try to find that one.
That's okay. It's the bottom box that's highlighted.
Oh, is it the one with the goals and the support?
Mm-hmm.
So learning how to run a business. So after college, I want to learning how to run a business. So after college, I want to own my own art shop with art materials, and I want to be able to get my own money and sell some stuff. And I want to be able to have this managing skill to be able to support myself and be able to get stuff organized and stuff. My my sports, my bad, being shown how to do so. My support skills, I like being shown times how to do stuff because sometimes it's actually hard to do it by yourself. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Michaela. And just as a reminder for everyone listening, this all becomes the framework that Michaela then works on through the college and career learning model each semester with setting goals and getting experiences. How about we do the next slide, please? Great. Okay. And so, Michaela, can you tell us a little bit about your independence and your interests and vision when it comes to that?
Okay. So my interest and vision. So I want to be successful in the future and have a comfortable life alongside my cats. So the first one, I love cats, and I want to own six cats one day in my lifetime. And I want to have a successful life in my little house with my cats and my family. So I'll be chilling. Um, so traveling independently, community, and sometimes go with public transportation. So I remember so the transportation part, I remember I was in high school. I remember I was getting taught how to take the subway while I was while I was graduating. I remember somebody came over to my house to teach me how to take the subway here to there. And then I remember one day when I was freshman year, it got easier. I remember learning over time. When I came back to Temple, over time and over time, it got easier for me to know where I was supposed to go. So yeah.
Great. Thanks for sharing. So those things make up, each student has their own person-centered plan like that we've talked about, that we've gone over. And those are the things that then the student uses when they talk with their team of mentor about the goals that they want to choose to set, and the experiences they want to get. So if you can go to the next slide. Okay, I won't go into significant depth on each of these, but these are key because this is a list of college and career skills developed by Think College. And we've actually expanded upon how they're described and examples of each of these things in the latest brief about the college and career learning model. But what I want to point out is that there are 4 domains or areas. Those are academic and career habits, community engagement, balance of multiple roles, and self-direction. So in a moment, so the student starts off the process each semester by reviewing these with their team of mentors. And again, we have another document that kind of describes these in greater depth. But they talk about what do these things look like in college life? What are strengths for you? And what are things to work on? And that's how they then select the goals and the experiences that they'll get. So next, I'll turn it over to Andrea to talk a little bit more about what it looks like when students start setting goals and engaging in progress monitoring and self-evaluation.
You can go to the next slide. Thanks very much. So this slide has a image of a target, and then it also has a title which says Component 3, Goal Setting, Progress Monitoring, and Self-Evaluation. And below there's bulleted text. So the idea of a goal that students set is based on a few things. First of all, it's based on their person-centered plan, right? So the idea is you go from this big picture vision, and then you turn, the goal is the building blocks, the concrete building blocks of setting goals each semester that will allow students to build towards that vision. The other element is those college and career skills that Katie just spoke about in the previous slide. So students will shape goals based on skills that they want to work on. And then students receive support in setting these goals and working on these goals. Sometimes, it's a combination of support from peer advisors, peer mentors, advisors, and then also, in my case, myself, I also help with this as well. But support can look like many different things, of course. All right, can you go to the next slide? So just a step back, why is goal setting in college important? So first off, just straight off the bat, research shows that it helps, that it's associated with success in post-secondary contexts. So the research shows that it helps students in their transition to adulthood. Another element of it is sort of a model for growth in a post-secondary context. So a little bit of history is that, as there have been an expansion of programs for post-secondary education for students with intellectual disabilities, it's possible for programs to sort of fall into the trap of more segregated types of classes that are specifically to help, students in the program develop skills. And that's sort of a bit counter to the goal of a more integrated educational experience. So a goal-setting model can serve as an alternative to that. And the idea here is that students are setting goals and that are individualized to themselves and building skills, and it's within the context of, a college and career experience. The other element of it is that we can understand this as being tied to social role valorization, because students are essentially, as they're developing goals, this can allow them to sort of grow into roles that feel good for them. So maybe they're setting goals around social goals, and that might allow them to grow into sort of a friendship role, for example. Or maybe they're setting career goals, and that might allow them to develop into a career type role. So there's a lot of different layers of why goal setting in college. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So this slide has a picture of what do you call this? Like a cycle. And it has three components. It has the first step is set a goal. The second step is take action, and the third step is adjust goal or plan. And this is all part of, sorry, I said this a little bit out of order, but the title of this slide is Goal Setting, Progress Monitoring, and Self-Evaluation. So this chart we're looking at here is part of that, goal setting, progress monitoring, and self-evaluation. So the idea is that this is a cycle. It's a circular cycle. First, students will set goals, then they'll build towards the goals, and then, naturally, whenever you make a plan, naturally, you're going to have to adjust it along the way, because, you aim for something, but then you learn about yourself, or you realize you need to adjust the goal, or maybe things change in your life. So the idea is that it's a constant cycle of goal setting, working towards the goal, and making adjustments. Okay, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so here is what the actual form looks like that students use to set goals and, you know, monitor their progress. So what you'll see here first at the top is the section that clarifies, you know, the basis. So you see it asks, how does it connect to your person-centered plan? What skill is your goal going to be working on? So again, that gets back to the part that we were talking about before, the college and career skills. That's that chart that Katie was talking about. Now students set what's called a SMART goal, and the way I'll explain it is, like, first and foremost, it's got to be specific enough so that at the end of the semester, you can tell whether or not you reached your goal. Because if it's so vague and you can't tell, then you can't really evaluate yourself. So that's like the most important thing about a SMART goal. And then the other element of it is that, you know, you want it to be ambitious and realistic. You want both of those things to be there. And then timely, of course, it's got to be relevant to right now, but that's not something you have to worry about, because students are never, they're only ever setting goals that are timely. And so from personal experience, I would say, like, the most important thing about a SMART goal is that, like, it matters to the student. And I think that's, like, for me, the most like grounding thing is that I'll just be like, okay, like, why don't you take a minute and think about what matters to you this semester, you know? And the pieces will usually come together that way, because there's stuff that matters to students. There's stuff that students want out of their semester. And so that's usually like a guiding force in all of this. And now the other element, you see advising review number 1, number 2, that's part of the, you know, of progress monitoring over time, you know, checking in with the students, how's it going with your goal? So that's that. And it'll, yeah. You could go to the next slide. Oh, Mikayla, you want to take it over from here?
Okay. So, what is my first college and career skill that I would like to work on? Managing my personal finance. So, like, that's a goal that I want to do, because, like, I have $50 right now that I saved up, and I want to save up until I be able to, like, save up money until I get an apartment and stuff. How would I does the correct how does it connect in the personal center plan? I talk money management in my PCP. How about, like, to keep track of your learning every week? Every week I'll ask my mom how much money I have in my account, and I'll take Google. But I'm gonna be honest, I haven't been Google documented, but I know I just been asking my mom how much money I have in my bank account. She just tells me.
So what's
But
your SMART goal?
my SMART goal, I want to have $100 in my bank account at the end of the semester. So I want to have $100 in my bank account for the end of the semester. So I'll be able to, like, my mom's birthday is coming up, and we're going on a cruise, actually. So I want to, like, save money so I'd be able to chip into her happy birthday cruise and stuff.
Great. Thanks, Mikayla. We can go to the next slide, and Andrea will tell us a little bit about goal attainment scaling, and then we'll come back to you, Mikayla, for your example.
Yeah, so the idea of goal attainment scaling is that you basically you break the SMART goal into 5 options. So instead of it being, did you hit your goal or did you not hit your goal, you get 5 you get 5 options. Students make 5 options for themselves. And of course we support them in like sort of figuring out how to break that down. So what I'll say is, like, okay, what's the worst, what's your nightmare scenario? That would be much less than expected outcome. And then expected outcome is like, you hit your goal. Much more than expected outcome would be like dream scenario, way better than you ever dreamed, right? And so that way at the end of the semester, you can look at the options and you can say, okay, which one of these do you think describes your semester? That's the idea of the goal attainment scaling.
Thanks, Andrea. So if we go to the next slide, Michaela, will you tell us a little bit about what the levels you set for your goal attainment were for this semester? Maybe let's talk about how we usually start, which is we start right in the middle, which is what is the outcome that you expect to be able to achieve from working toward that?
So the expect outcome is like $100 in savings in a semester.
Okay. And then what would it look like if you were to be somewhat less than expected with your outcome?
So what was the other one? I'm so sorry.
What would it look like if you were to be at the somewhat less than expected outcome?
Oh, much is less outcome. So having money in the savings and not having no money in the savings. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so that's the one you have as much less than expected, right? That would be that if you didn't accomplish anything.
Yeah.
And then the one in the middle there would be $50 in savings.
Yeah.
So let's jump ahead to what if you were to achieve even more than you expected? What goal, what's the description you have for somewhat more than expected on the slide here?
So I will have have $120.
Okay. Yep, so 110 or 120. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you and Andrea are going to be talking in the next probably few weeks to decide what outcome you reached. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Anything you want to share about where you think you're going to be with your goal?
I think I'll be around $100.
Okay. So we would call that goal attainment. Great. Thanks, Michaela. We can go to the next slide here. So we've covered the three components of the college and career learning model so far, which is that person-centered plan, the review of the college and career skills, and then the goal setting and evaluation of goal attainment. A fourth component is that there's ongoing support for students because they meet with their peer mentors every 2 weeks. So they meet with them on a regular basis, one-on-one, 10 hours a week, but the whole group gets together every 2 weeks. Michaela, can you tell us a little bit about what happens at those circle of support meetings?
So we usually talk about our goals.
Okay.
What our goals.
Yeah.
My bad. Am I supposed to read this slide?
You don't have to read the slide. This just has the agenda listed for the circle of support meeting. But can you tell me more about what you mean when you say you all talk about your goals?
Also, we talk about usually my goals, what I should do, what I should start to do. If I get behind our assignments, I will put in a goal doing my assignments on time, getting help with my assignments. Another goal that I actually had was getting on to class on time, and I actually have been getting to class on time this time.
Very nice.
And another goal is communication, checking my emails. And yeah.
Great. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, so the agenda here, just to describe the slide and read it for accessibility, there's a photo of 3 students who are meeting with a student in LNCS. So there are 3 peer mentors and an LNCS student. The agenda that's listed, which is the structure that Circle of Support meetings always follows, is a check-in, discussing goals and plans from last meeting. So those are kind of short-term goals, not to give confusion to what we talk about when we talk about a big semester-long goal. They talk about classes, so assignments, wins, challenges, supports, extracurriculars, so involvement, wins, challenges, supports, the college and career learning model, goals and experiences, so where students are at with those things, and then they wrap up. So we can go to the next slide. So the last component are college and career experiences. There's a photo here of a student with a basketball, and he's with a peer mentor who also has one, and they're throwing their basketballs up in the air. The intention for this is that of those 4 domains of college and career learning skills we discussed, students only set a goal in one of those areas for the semester. And we wanted to make sure that students were still getting a range of experiences related to all of those skills listed as important for college and career learning. So through the experiences, students engage in intentional campus activities aligned with the college and career skills, and often things that support them in meeting their goals. So students build skills through those campus engagement experiences that correspond to the roles they want, like wanting to be a club basketball player. So if we go to the next slide, we'll let Mikayla tell us a little bit about some of the experiences that you've done this semester. So Mikayla, can you tell us what were the skills that you wanted to focus on under academic and career habits?
So academics and pure habits. Is it the ones
Can we go back? Yeah, right there. It says number 1 and number 5 that you picked out.
Attendance and I don't know what that says.
Yeah, punctuality. So being on time.
Be on time, punctuality. So acceptance and direction in constant circumstances.
Yep. So constructive criticism. So that means like
Yeah.
being willing to listen when people give you some guidance or give you some feedback on things that you can work on. So can you tell us what were the experiences that you engaged in to get some practice and develop skills related to those things? So can you read from us in the white box where it says waking up on time?
Yeah. So I've been waking up on time a lot. I've been waking up on time. Letting professional and making comments about body movement and being comfortable with the comments. So
Can you tell us what that one means?
So being able to like, is it like being touched and following what it's supposed to do?
Do you have
Like
a class that's
like
is that in your
self-defense?
dance? Yeah.
It's like women's self-defense, being able to like do this, like lean to a direction.
Okay.
Cause
Is
like,
that in your dance class, Mikayla?
oh no, that's actually in my it was in self-defense
In
actually
your
in
self-defense
karate.
class. Okay, got it. So getting feedback on the things that you were doing physically. Great. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so it looks here, Mikayla, like you said, you wanted to engage in responsible risk-taking. Can you tell us what experience you got related to this?
So experience risk taking. So one risk taking that I took was I totally forgot what risk I took.
Can you look down on the screen and see what you have listed in that white box? It says getting.
Oh yeah. Yeah, my ears pierced. I actually got my ears pierced and my nose pierced.
Wow.
So I took a risk.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing. We can go to the next slide. Great. Okay, so in this one, Mikayla, you talked about building your independence. What did you do to work on building your independence? It's that sentence that says, I started.
Oh, I started crocheting. So I made a yellow hat and a pink hat. I crocheting. I watched the video, and then I just started crocheting out the crocheting machine.
Awesome. I like that one, because it's something you like, but 2, because it relates to a support that you talked about. You said you like getting shown how to do things. And what's neat is you found a way to find on your own how you can be shown how to do things. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And Andrea and I have seen your creations and can attest that they're pretty fantastic.
Yup.
Great. So now we can go to this last slide here. Great. So this last one was in the area of self-direction and anticipating your needs. Can you tell us a little bit about what you said here about choosing whether to come to class?
So whether to come to class, so I like choosing whether I feel well.
Okay.
And yeah.
So if you're having not feeling well, taking a rest day.
So like I've been like feeling a little depressed, and I feel like I've been coming to class, but I was actually like I was pushed a little bit to like go back on track, and yeah.
Okay. So finding that balance, that's really great, and figuring out kind of what your needs are and how you respond.
Yeah.
Thanks. Well, Mikayla, I want to thank you for sharing so openly about your person-centered plan, about your goals, and about your experiences. We can go to the next slide, and Andrea will close us out by talking about what the timeline for this looks like in a given semester.
Sure, yeah. So the heading here is CCLM semester plan, and there's a image here of a checklist. So there's, for each semester, the schedule is essentially this. Each student sets a goal, a SMART goal, and you know, in theory they could set two, but in practice it's usually one, and I find that it works. It's more clear if you set one goal. But in addition to that, students have 4 experiences where they work on a skill of their choice. So that was the 4 skills that Michaela was talking about before. And you know, they can do more than that, of course, but at minimum, it's a minimum of 4 experiences each semester. So a schedule might look like, you know, 1 experience every 2 to 4 weeks so that you can hit 4 by the end of the semester. Sometimes it just so happens that, like, you know, there's a lot of activity happening on like a particular part of a particular month, and so they hit 3 experiences all in within a 2-week period. That's fine too. So that's basically the idea. And I'll just say, when it comes to the goal element of it, it's not of course not just the setting of the goal, it's also working on the goal throughout the semester and tracking your progress. So that's happening, ideally that's happening throughout the semester. Students are saying, okay, how did I do, in the past 2 weeks? How am I doing in my progression towards reaching my goal? And then at the end of the semester, students will review their progress towards their goals. And that's when the goal attainment scaling comes in, where they say, okay, which scenario did I achieve this semester? Yeah.
Great, thanks, Andrea. So we can go to the next slide. Here we have our references. So one, I want to note that there is now an insight brief on the college and career learning model that's ready. There's also a fuller webinar where we go through this in even greater depth that's available there. I want to talk about just a few nods to Charting the Life course, which, as I noted, is the person-centered planning framework we use. Some information on secondary transition predictors of post-school success that informed our work, as well as the self-determined learning model of instruction, which is really where we built the idea from, related to setting a goal, taking action, and assessing progress, and continuing that iterative cycle. Next slide, please. We also have some resource links here for you. So there's, and it looks like, yeah, the College and Career Learning Model, LNCS at Temple, Pennsylvania Inclusive Higher Education Consortium, and Charting the Life course, Person-Centered Planning. So with that said, I think we should have plenty of time for questions and to talk. We want to thank you for spending time with us tonight. I want to thank Andrea and Michaela for spending their time here. And we just wanted to let you know that you can reach out and ask any questions as a follow-up. But first, let's chat here. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Thank you so much. It was really interesting, and I've just been taking notes myself. So it's really helpful information. I don't see any questions in the chat. If people want to type in questions, they're welcome to do that. And otherwise, we can just get the conversation going. I was just curious if there are, and maybe you answered this and I missed it, but if there are certain areas that students tend to choose their goals from, like which domain do they mainly choose the goals from? Did you cover that and I missed it about how, okay. So I'm just curious if.
Yeah. I would say that we tend to see students focusing quite a bit on kind of managing their schedule, which can fall into a few different areas. So it could fall under the skill of responsibility, under balance of multiple roles. It could fall under academic and career habits in terms of attendance and punctuality. So those are two big ones. I personally am often pushing to see students set more goals pertaining to community engagement because I want to see them getting the most out of their college experience. Andrea, what would you say? Andrea meets with all of our students about their goals, so you would have a good sense.
Yeah. Granted, I have terrible recall, so these kinds of questions are just a setup for me to be like, I can't remember. But okay, so I'm gonna do my best. Um they can range. Katie, I agree. There's a lot of punctuality goals. There's also a good amount of social goals. A lot of students are looking to connect more, make more friends. There are, you'll see some career related goals for sure. I don't remember, like, they might vary in terms of the skill domain. I'm trying to think about other, and that you do see some, like, I want to be getting involved in a certain amount of clubs or a certain type of club, or I want to go to more events this semester. So they do range. I mean, you also see some like independent living goals. So I want to build towards, living independently, or I want to do something else independently. So yeah, there's definitely a range, and in the same way that, any group of students are going to have a range of goals. Yeah.
Michaela, can you think of any other goals you've set in past semesters? So this semester you focused on saving money, and I actually think that's what you focused on last semester too. But do you remember prior to that what goals you would have set?
So goals that I will set, I think it would have been around meeting new people when I was a freshman, meeting new people, making friendships. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
I have a question that's centered more on how the students are coming to Temple, and if you're seeing a lot of the students, and maybe Michaela can share about her experience where they have a pretty clear idea of what they want to pursue from a career standpoint that then helps guide them in terms of the classes that they're taking and that type of thing, or are a lot of students coming in where they're not quite sure and they just need those opportunities to explore different interests or different areas that maybe would spark interest?
Oh, do I answer that question?
Yeah, what do you think, Michaela?
So are you talking about transport part? I think so like it depends. It might be like some people actually come on Uber here on Uber.
Oh, Michaela, Mary was actually asking related to when you come to Temple, did you have a really clear idea of what you wanted to study?
So I wanted to become an art teacher, but it changed over time. So like I wanted to own my own art shop.
Okay. And what about, have you noticed any of your classmates or friends? Have you kind of heard, I think there might be a lot going on at the student center at the moment.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's okay. Michaela, do you have friends who have kind of figured out what they want to do over their time at Temple?
So I struggle with people in LCS. So
Mhm.
I think one of my friends, I think one of his goals, I think one of her goals, not her, but one of his goals was doing something. I don't remember, but it was something really cool.
Okay. Yeah, I'd say, Mary, we see a mix. Some students come with a really clear idea, and then it's really through their classes and their different experiences that they land on something else. Something I definitely have seen as a trend, and this relates to kind of involvement and engagement, is the longer students are engaged, and really active on campus, the more we hear of students saying that they want their future career to be in a college setting, so like in higher education. I think we have at least 2 current seniors who are really hoping to be able to find something at Temple specifically.
Oh, nice.
That's cool. Yeah.
There, we're going to launch a poll, just a little announcement here is just to get everyone's feedback. If you can give us some feedback using this poll, we certainly would appreciate it. We value your impression and feedback. So, and then while people are doing that too, there's a question that was typed in the chat. What are some from Amelia? What are some examples of independent living goals and how do they typically explore and reach those?
Yeah, the one that I can think of is I know we've had more than one student talk about wanting to get their driver's license. And so the goal they set is to really spend time with the driver's permit manual. So that would be, and then they work on it with a peer mentor. Andrea, other examples you can think of?
Yeah, and there are a few examples of students who have a goal to move into, an independent residence. Like they're living with their parents and they want to get their own place. And that often involves like getting help from people, like, okay, I'm going to reach out to this person that's helpful with this kind of thing. And it's a process of getting help with getting things set up. Another one is, well, it's not necessarily independent living, but independent, so sometimes people will be like, oh, I want to get to my classes by myself. And, I think they just work on learning how to get to class by themselves. Yeah, that's fake. But, over time throughout the semester, they'll get better at that, at, learning the campus and everything. So yeah, those are examples.
Can you remind us, is housing an option on campus or campus? I recall that wasn't what was available through Temple, so it's more just academic and being on campus.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not available yet. We hope that will be in our future. We have had and do have some students who end up living on their own, but they do the coordination kind of that, like near campus. We are a provider of education support services. I don't know how different Minnesota is in terms of waivers, but in Pennsylvania, for individuals who are on Medicaid waivers, what's nice is it's able to provide a lot of funding support. And another benefit is that we tend to be really closely connected to students, their families, and their supports coordinator. So we can have team meetings and conversations where once a student has expressed, hey, I want to live on my own, we can start talking about like what supports would be available for that. So it's a work in progress, but I just wanted to make that note.
So are they typically, in those situations, are some of your students at Temple living in an apartment that say would be close by the university? So
Yes.
even though there's not campus housing, they are living in their own apartment, housing of their choice, as opposed to a family or some other
At
where
home.
they're commuting.
Yeah. We haven't had a lot of students do that, but we do currently have 2, and we've had others in the past. Again, like I said, that's kind of a work in progress. Yeah.
I have a question. How do you respond when a student sets a goal that's unrealistic? And yeah, how do you respond to that? Has it ever come up?
Yeah, it definitely has. I think what's challenging, something I've heard a lot in work on self-determination and goal setting is like what we never want to be is a goal crusher. I think having a lofty goal with high expectations is a great thing. And often, even if the goal is not something you or I or perhaps almost anyone is going to accomplish, so much can be gained and learned from the process of working toward it. I've had one student who has talked a lot about wanting to be the president. And that's a pretty tough goal. I'm not to say it's not possible. And I don't say that. But I think we really try to break down what is it about that that's appealing and what would it take to get there. And if a student is willing to take steps and strides on what it would take to get there, there's going to be nothing but benefits there. I think we can continue having healthy conversations about what are other options and opportunities in case that doesn't work out. But that's one thing. I think what's common when you do goal setting with high schoolers is you'll hear a lot of high schoolers talk about wanting to be professional athletes. And it's like 0.0001 of the population percent that gets to do that. And so again, just talking about all the things to be gained from working toward that goal. But knowing that it's a tough goal to achieve.
I have a few thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Like, so there's, okay, a few things. One of the things is like, I think part of that is kind of built into this whole system because students get to evaluate themselves at the end of the semester. So if they set a goal that was a little bit, like maybe a little bit unrealistic, at the end of the semester, they'll see like they didn't hit it and they have the opportunity to adjust their goal. So they can kind of learn for themselves what's realistic and what's not realistic. And then the other element of it is like, I will like, you never, you can have a conversation with a student, like in the same way that you would with anybody else. Like, you don't have to just be like, well, like it's your self-determination. So like, I'm going to say nothing at all, like you can have a conversation. You could be like, oh, okay. So like, all right, like that's, wow, you want to do this every single week? Do you want to like give yourself a little bit of wiggle room in case like, you want to have a goal with a little bit of wiggle room in case you allow yourself some space to miss a week or two, and students will be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, you can have a conversation with a student. At the end of the day though, you can't be like, no, like that's unrealistic, but you could have a conversation. So I think both. Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
think it's good to have a conversation and to help them think it through, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I think so that's really what you're talking about, is to kind of help them maybe understand the different choices or options.
Yeah.
And then giving them the space to think about it and formulate sort of what they think works best for them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree.
And this kind of goes to the next question is, can you provide guidance for students on a goal area to focus on? I guess that would be more like from the very beginning, just where to direct them to focus on a goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is more work that comes from research on goal setting, even with other models. But we often say to promote engagement, to start with a goal that is purely like personal interest and fun, right? Rather for me, that if I'm working on goal setting and kind of trying to be better all around, instead of setting a goal that I'm going to clean my house every single day, because that's not fun and I don't like doing that, maybe I'm going to set a goal about like getting to a new exercise class once a week, because that will be fun. Maybe it'll be with a friend, those kinds of things. So I do think starting out initially with something that's kind of purely low stakes, enjoyable, that type of thing. From there, I will say there's certainly some room for goal shaping, not necessarily in terms of like what absolute goal that they set. But if we see a student who, is having challenges in a number of specific areas, I think it's in that conversation about the college and career skills that we can talk about what some of the challenges are, how that's impacting them, and whether or not it's something that they want and are willing to work on. We do tend to see some students want to who either set a goal or list that they're going to do an experience for something that they already do well. And so I do try to kind of push back when I see that or hear that, because again, you don't make progress from your comfort zone. And so kind of pushing yourself outside your comfort zone a little bit. Yeah. Anything else you'd add, Andrea?
The only other thing I would add is that, and we've gotten like a question like this before, like, oh my God, there's so many skill options. Like, how do you help a student narrow it down?
Mhm.
And I think I would say like, I think the main thing for me is that like students have goals, like they go into the semester like with goals, there's something they want. Like even like first year students, like it might be like, I don't know, I just got here, but like I definitely want to like do well in class, like students have goals. So you can work with that. That's what will make this meaningful for them. Yeah.
And I imagine the first time they do it, the second time they do it is the hardest, and then is there kind of a rhythm where they're getting more comfortable with this process and really seeing the benefits of it, and then it's easier to come up with the things, or
Hmm.
not?
I
think
have
so.
found, yeah, what would you
go
say,
ahead.
Andrea?
No, you go ahead, Katie.
I was just going to say, I find students, it becomes a lot clearer to students with practice how to set a specific goal.
Yeah.
We all talk about like a vision for the future, and that's honestly part of a lot of conversations in person-centered planning. And action isn't always taken to say like, how do we make that concrete? What are the steps you need to take to get there? And I think because we now have quite a few students who have been practicing setting goals for, 3 academic years, jumping to a place of like, well, what would this look like in my daily life in college? What do I want to commit to? What's reasonable for me? Those things are coming from them a lot more organically than previously.
That makes sense.
Any other thoughts, Andrea, on that?
Yeah, I think I kind of just agree. And yeah, and I'll just reiterate. Yeah, I think it's definitely there's a learning process in turning a goal into a SMART goal. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I see Maricela has some questions in there about just some specifics of balance. Yes, I'm happy to answer. So academic load of students, all students take 2 courses a semester. Some students elect to take a third. Almost all students are auditing courses. So they do get a grade, but it's again, for an audit, it's not credit earning. We do have some students also who end up trying out a class for credit, and our goal becomes to kind of build that up if that's something they do want to pursue, perhaps an associate degree in the future. We really say the 2 courses are just kind of one piece of the puzzle. Other things that they're doing to kind of work toward their credit hours in the program are internships and career development, social engagement, time with peer mentors. So no, we don't have a pass-fail option, but that's a good question. And we've actually been talking about that more often because we find that we're not sure that the grades are particularly meaningful. And, if that's the case, maybe let's focus attention more so on like meaningful individualized feedback rather than a grade that potentially could be arbitrary. And then are they expected to keep up with the workload of the general student population? It really varies. Every student has an individual learning plan for each of their courses. So we have an academic supports coordinator who reviews the syllabus, talks with the student, and they kind of, the reason why it's for audit and not for credit is because our academic relations coordinator does make modifications to the syllabus. So it's not just accommodations to access materials and content, it's modifications because there are some different learning needs. And so generally they are not doing the full workload of the general student population, but our goal is kind of always to promote a similar level of effort, in that we would hope to see a similar level of growth for our students, even if it might look a bit different from some of their peers taking it for credit.